I wonder what it would be like for us to switch places in the same way May and Osha end up switching places in the Acolyte. Like, I do the news.
Oh, I was like, I thought you meant in life, and I was like, well, there may be some problems that might arise from that.
Star Wars, Transformers, Godzilla, animation, whatever else. Rebels, robots, and etc.
Well, it's Wednesday night, and Cameron and Rachel are hanging out once again, which must mean it's Starformer Zillamation night. Welcome to Rebels and Robots and etc., episode 59. I'm Cameron.
I'm Rachel.
And this is our bi-weekly chat about Star Wars and...
Transformers.
And...
Animation. Cameron does this every time, and I always feel like quizzing me about the content on our own podcast.
No, we just added stuff. We added Godzilla, and we added animation, and we added whatever else.
Godzilla's
we
been here for like 8 months.
Yes, but this is... We added... It was originally just... I said Star Wars, you said Transformers. But then we added more things, so we added you doing one more, and then we added me doing one more. But it is funny that it does sound like I'm quizzing you. And what else, Rachel?
And what else?
Yeah, yesterday...
If you're a true fan of the podcast as a woman.
I don't remember what it was,
about?
but I called you out for not knowing a really minuscule fact about Star Wars, and you made a joke about me thinking you're a fake fan. And then I just said that, yeah, the whole purpose of the whole podcast was just building a case against you.
We asked if it was the first time that clicks had been used as a measurement of
a distance in Star Wars.
And I said yes, and you said when. And I went, I can't pull it off the top of my head, but I know it has.
Yeah, and that was when I said that the whole podcast is just me building a case against you as a fake fan. It was an inside job. The call is coming from inside the podcast. So yeah, we talk about anything else that we're both interested in on this podcast. But today, we are simply concluding The Acolyte, the first season, or hopefully not the only season. We'll see. But as of right now, the only season, the first season of the show, The Acolyte. It does not end with the assumption that it's the end.
Yeah.
We'll see how that goes.
Maybe they just get some comics and a couple novels.
Yeah, see, that's what I...
And
this one I
skip ahead to a certain someone.
This one I would, if they continue it in a different medium, like a book or a comic book, I would like to read that because I do want to know the ending of the story, regardless. So we're ending Acolyte. It is the end of this season. You know, in this show we go through not your classic like shows of a season, but the seasons of nature. We had Hot Bot Summer last year. Then we had Autumn. I messed it up. Ahsoka Autumn. Ahsoka Odd. I'm forgetting her last name. Asako. And then we had Winter Monsterland. Yeah. And then we had Bad March Madness and Bad March Badness simultaneously. And now... So we did not technically have like a spring, but Mad March Madness. I said Mad March Madness. Man, I am. Yeah, I was not surprised when we were bad at podcasting on Saturday because it was way out of our usual schedule. But I have no excuse.
Maybe we're just bad at podcasts.
It's actually just the standard. I'm not going to argue with that. But
Athena, your thoughts?
Her head just lifts up. It's pretty bad when the most popular person on the podcast is the one who doesn't talk, doesn't speak any language. But March is very much spring, and then this summer we didn't really have a name for it, but now I'm retroactively calling it The Acolytes Suns Out, Guns Out Summer, brought to you by Qimir, the gun show Teethies. We don't have a graphic designer. You're the graphic designer. Put that on a...
No, I'm not.
You're our graphic designer. Put that on a... We need a... We should have been doing this whole time. We should have been making logos for every season.
That's a lot to ask of me, I think.
But because this is the end of one season, that means there's another season starting soon. the latter half of the summer. We will be announcing that at the end of today's episode, so stay tuned for that. Any news or recent thoughts from since not the last week, the last 5 days?
I really don't have a whole lot.
Let's see. I have this is just a okay, I have to find it. This is a reference to last week's podcast. I was listening back and there was a very funny moment. Just at the very beginning, it was 2 minutes and 22 seconds in. As we were last time. Last episode 5 of the Acolyte was so good.
It really is probably the...
Did I write down the wrong time code?
Yeah.
Yeah, there it is.
We're not going to be as excited as we were last time.
So, we were talking about episode 5 of the Acolyte with all the action, and you did a hand gesture in person, but I didn't. Neither of us explained your gesture, so all we hear is you making this very funny sound.
It really is probably the...
Yeah, sharp peak in the middle.
It doesn't make any sense.
I don't remember what I did.
You were emulating Qimir breaking
Yord's
neck, but in context, we both forgot we were podcasting for a second. So if you're listening back, if you listened to that last episode and you were confused,
if you listen to this podcast and you're confused, welcome to the general audience.
Yes, but that specifically, that was pretty egregious to be doing on a podcast. So I thought that was very funny. Let me think. I feel like no. I mean, we're here to just really talk about the Acolyte. It'll be 2 weeks before we record again, so I just wanted to see if there was any news that just came out the last few days. I didn't write anything down. Let's just do a quick search. Nothing. Yeah, I mean, it would have been nice to have a date for the Skeleton Crew. They probably have not decided yet.
Maybe give you some time for this to cool off.
Yeah, I typed in Starformers instead of Star Wars. This isn't news, but this is just an observation. Web people, the episode came out last night at 8 p.m. So, most people, at least a good amount of people, have not had a chance to watch the episode. Because if that's too late for you to watch last night, and then you work today...
My Twitter is full.
Well, not even Twitter, websites on the main page are posting headlines and thumbnails with massive spoilers.
Oh, yes.
Super annoying.
Yes,
super
this is
annoying.
Actually one of my biggest beefs about streaming services. It's can you please not post I'm going to harp on the Bad Batch people for a second. Honestly, some are the worst. Within an hour, and I understand what I'm talking about, within an hour posting just the biggest spoilers.
Yep.
And it's consistent with Star Wars too, actually. I saw it in Mando season 3, the episode where Book of Boba Fett. When Mando goes to get am I remembering correctly? Yes, he goes to Luke's.
Yes.
I got
on
that
Yavin 4.
Yeah, on Yavin 4. I got that spoiled.
So annoying.
At 8 a.m. the next day it came out because someone posted Mando meeting Ahsoka and R2, and obviously who's R2 going to be with? Luke. I remember I was actually really upset. I'm it's 8 a.m. the next day. It's not even 12 hours. And this is actually back when episodes were coming out at 12 a.m., I think.
Yeah. No, it's super frustrating because I think there's a certain element of if you want to avoid spoilers, you can avoid certain things, but you shouldn't have to be entirely off the internet for the whole, even the after a certain amount of time you expect it, but immediately, yeah, it's ridiculous. So, in other news that we should definitely be talking about, Star Wars' Mark Hamill under fire over Donald Trump message. Should we talk about that? Is that things that we should be talking about on this podcast? Is the political opinions of people really?
No.
Let's just quickly Google search Leslie Headland and see what comes up and talk about that. No, a headline actually did come out within the last few hours that I correct something I previously said on a previous episode.
The last few hours?
Hours. I pronounce the H in hours, as we all know. Star Wars: The Young Jedi Adventures season 2 is coming out next month. I said it had already come out.
Ooh, look what we're watching, guys.
I think my assumption is if there was anything worth mentioning in there, we would hear about it. Like, if there was like any sort of interesting characters or lore, like surprising lore stuff, people would be talking about it. But in the fact that we're not hearing at all about it makes me think that
there's just nothing for people to get mad about in that show.
That's true.
So that's why people aren't talking
about
it.
Oh, no, this is kind of interesting. They in this trailer for the new season, they are rescuing the creatures that they rescued in The Last Jedi. The like deer antelope things on Canto Bight.
Oh, nice.
That's kind of a fun little connection.
Here's an example. Sorry, as we were talking about people posting Twitter. Spoilers for the Acolyte finale, which we're going to talk about, posted an hour and a half after the episode came out. Soul's method of death.
Oh, wow.
With picture.
Dang, dude.
And if you're listening to this and you post about it immediately afterward, okay. But it's kind of difficult to put #Acolyte spoilers because I don't look at text first. I look at images first on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of like, and I didn't get spoiled, fortunately, but it's kind of like, it's kind of hard to see Acolyte spoilers and then there's no room between trying to scroll past.
Yep. Yeah, annoying. What did that remind me of? Oh, that's especially annoying because not only do you have the fact that Soul dies and this spoiled for you, but there's some question after he dies of whether he's really dead or not. I felt from an audience. That was like one of the better moments of the show is so many times in media, like characters don't die and that oftentimes undercuts the death. But for me in this sequence, it actually increased the anxiety of the episode as I was not sure if he was actually dead or not. I actually quite liked that because it would have worked for me one way or the other. So then it double spoils it that you know for a fact that he's actually dead in that moment, which is quite annoying. So with the lack of news, we can just go ahead and start talking about this final episode of The Acolyte. Episode 8. The title of the episode itself is The Acolyte, which I do kind of like. The implication of that, and what we'll talk about in a moment, is you don't actually know who the Acolyte is. And this final episode kind of confirms who it is. But it starts back on what is labeled as unknown planet that looks like Octo.
It is not Octo. It is not Octo.
Yeah, it looks like it.
Yeah.
And it starts with over the like logos and stuff. We hear Osha still in Qimir's helmet, breathing like Vader.
But she's heavy breathing.
And this continues to like this. I think this episode really hammers in. This show is really meant to parallel Anakin, parallel the prequels, parallel a lot of Star Wars stuff. And this whole thing is very much, and there's a particular element of this that really confirms this, is that this show is really meant to foreshadow, which is we can talk about it. What actually happens here is she is like having like almost like a seizure inside the helmet. And Qimir tries to save her, and he goes into the same like controlled state that I don't have the character names in front of me. Big no-no when we're talking about this stuff. Torben, whenever he was being mind controlled by the witches, that black eyes. So I guess the implication is that her force powers are kind of just out of control. And she has that without even having learned that power from her parents. Osha has that power kind of just locked away inside of her. And Qimir has to like really push to get to her, and then he does eventually get the helmet off. And we'll kind of just jump ahead here, just because we've already spoiled a bunch of stuff. At the end of the episode, Osha ends up going with him. And I feel like this is the only moment for me that actually builds their relationship. Like, actually makes it feel like he cares for her and he's not just manipulating her. And why she would have any sense of this guy actually might be good for me to go with. I think there are a lot of different ways you can read the ending, and we can talk about it later, but I just wanted to reference that while we're talking about this scene. Is even if he wanted to use her, he wouldn't want her to die, but it did genuinely feel like he was actually trying to save her from herself, kind of.
Screw May, though.
Say again?
Screw May.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
I don't know. That whole portion of that episode, that part of the episode really just kind of like confused me.
Towards the end?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, we'll definitely get to it. There's a lot to talk about there, I
not
think.
like confused me and like I didn't understand, but in like feels like a weird 180 from the characters that they've tried to establish for 7 episodes. I
totally agree. And yeah, we can talk about, I think there's a lot to talk about there, so we'll have to establish that once we get to it. But put a pin in that. We'll talk about it.
AKA zip it for the next 10 minutes.
And Osha says that she has a vision of May killing Sol, holding a lightsaber, not using it, and killing him with the Force. And so they both decide they both want to go there and find Sol and May, obviously for different motivations. But they pretty much strike a deal because Qimir has a ship and Osha knows where to go. So they both have the two halves of. It kind of felt like to me like a parent talking to a child. Like he's like, I have a spaceship. How are you gonna get there?
This is our get along ship. That's kind of how it felt too.
I was imagining like parents being to their children like, well, I've got a car. Do you have a car? Because I don't think you have a car.
And when they leave, we get a very massive reveal.
Yeah, and that's not quite happened yet because it does cut back to Sol and Osha, and they have pretty much just kind of a. I'm now realizing actually I kind of sold the show a little bit short in my assumption. So Osha May at the end of the episode does kind of come around a little bit, not necessarily liking the Jedi, but kind of believing in like justice rather than like vengeance, because that was what she was seeking. And she ends up deciding to not kill Sol and want him to stand trial. And similarly, I was like, how did this come about? This feels out of nowhere. But in this sequence, Sol explains to her that he wanted to save both of them. And I feel like that might be the small thing, like Qimir and Osha, him saving her is the small moment that kind of makes that switch believable. This is the moment that maybe makes that scene believable, is his honesty, maybe. And I think we'll talk about this later. I think May has a lot of anger against him, but does get a chance to actually see him as a person, not just the murder. Because before, he was just the man who murdered her mother. But now he gets to see that he's torn over it, that he does have regret. Unlike, because she did not have that chance with the other Jedi. Kanaka's not really relevant because he was already dead, but not Vernestra. Indara, thank you. Indara and Torben, she just showed up and killed them. But regardless, she ends up breaking herself out and she electrocutes him right as, this is so frustrating. The show continues to drag out the reveal of information. He walks over and he says, "You are not twins. You are," and then she shocks him, and we don't get the reveal.
They're the exact same person.
Yes. And then she escapes on. She doesn't call it an escape ship is what she calls it. It's just like, I feel like escape pod is one of those like very basic like universal science fiction terms, like even in Star Wars, I believe. And it was just weird. Her helmet looks super weird because her hair is coming out. It's actually here it's not an escape pod. That's why it's an actual ship. I forgot.
Yeah, it's like a mini ship.
So, We get...
And then Soul jumps in another mini ship.
So it's like the ship, it's kind of like how...
the Ghost is.
Well, the Ghost only has the small ship that breaks off.
Yes, I'm using it as an example.
But what I'm saying is the fact that there's a second stage is almost similar to how the Jedi starfighters, they attach to a larger ring for hyperspace travel.
Mm-hmm.
I get the sense that that's kind of what this is the ship has a piece for hyperspace and then you detach to go onto a planet. So you have...
So like the Ghost.
The Ghost doesn't have the Ghost only has the one piece that separates for a smaller ship, but then you still have the rest of the ship still intact.
Because you can't take the smaller ship through hyperspace.
But what I'm saying is she's in the smaller ship, but the ship that he's driving detaches. So it's like you have a mini ship inside the larger ship.
I understand. So I think we were trying to use different examples for the same thing.
But he's still driving the ship, but it's more like the real world spacecraft, the space shuttle, that when they're launched from Earth, they detach the much larger piece, but they're still piloting the ship. The humor of it is she gets in a piece that comes out of the ship, and then he gets in a ship that's medium sized, leaving behind a larger piece. It's Russian nesting dolls of ships. The visual is very funny. They fly into the rings of this planet. Do you remember the name of the planet?
No. I'm going to be honest. I've unfortunately kind of checked out of the show.
Brindok. It's the planet where everything went down. Where,
that's going to be my guess, actually.
Where the Bantha Poodoo hit the fan, as it were. So they're returning back to the location of the Vergence, of where everything bad happened.
Scene of the crime.
Exactly. And they're, in order to try to escape Soul, May flies... There's like the rings of the ship. The ring of the ship, of the planet, has like a space. It's like a double layer ring, and there's space in between just enough for her ship. His ship is just a little bit too big to comfortably fit in there, but it does. He flies it in there, which means it's like rocking against rocks.
And he's gaining on her when, I don't know if this is ever elaborated on, Basil sabotages his ship momentarily.
Yeah, I'm going to see if I can find that moment. I'm wondering...
the Twitter is a Basil hate account.
My thought is it possible we're misinterpreting it and the ship was actually breaking?
Maybe he was taking up too much damage and he stopped it to stop him.
Oh, that's possible. Well, but this would be more likely to kill them. That makes logical sense for the character he's trying to save their hide. Mm-hmm. But what it does is it causes the ship to roll over.
Yeah. It's hard to incorporate that when you have a character that doesn't really speak.
Yeah. His actions... So what it appears on the surface level is, as Soul is about to ram May's ship, Basil, he does something with the cords of the ship and causes the ship to malfunction. Why he does that is incredibly unclear and never referenced again. So I guess it's ultimately kind of irrelevant. It doesn't really matter. Basil's not an important character. Everything kind of ends up the same in the end anyways. It was a visually cool space fight, though, because as they got it started, I realized there hasn't really been a lot of spaceship stuff in this series up to this point. Then we get a long, boring, very prequely conversation between Vernestra and a guy from the Senate, further talking about the need or the not...
The need for like an internal review.
Or an external review, yeah.
He does have an interesting comment where he kind of... I can't remember if it's now or if it's later. They're having this conversation and he's like, you have the Jedi who are trying to control the uncontrollable. And Vernestra's like, oh, the Force? And he says, your emotions. Which is very interesting.
That I feel like that's ultimately almost the thesis statement of the show. Like that's why this scene is in here, is to make it very clear that what is the biggest problem with the Jedi. We see it with Soul. Soul, I think, is honestly the biggest core of the show.
Soul, you're the biggest problem.
Soul is the soul of the show.
We're kidding.
Is that he acts like he's not acting on action, but almost everything he does is very emotional. And And I can see that. I think the show, not to jump too far ahead to my final thoughts, I think the show is creative and has good ideas, but does not always execute them well. Like this scene.
It has good intentions. It's kind of like in theory, yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
In execution,
mixed bag. Because I do think there are things that really work about this show. And I think maybe they needed to... I think maybe that's why some other things work. I think like when you see like if Dave Filoni's given too much creative control, you get the Ahsoka show. But when he's working with other people, you get like his episode to The Mandalorian or Rebels or the better parts of Clone Wars. Like I think Star Wars is absolutely at its best when it's collaborative. Everyone likes to think that George Lucas was the mastermind behind Star Wars, but the original trilogy was very much other people, him resourcing his things wife. Out. Ralph McQuarrie, his wife is the original editor. Huge deal. John Williams as the music. All the visual effects people. Like it was everyone contributing to this. And I'm not saying that this is not that, but it really seems like Leslie Heslin as the creator was a big creative control over the whole overarching thing. And that's where the show is at its worst, is the bigger ideas and the way they're implemented on an episode by episode basis. But anyways, after that conversation, pretty much the senator's pretty much like, you better come back with whoever murdered all those Jedi, or it's gonna look really bad for the rest of the Jedi.
Valid.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of bad if you lose a bunch of people and.
Well, I think I would like to see, and maybe I missed it, but I don't. What is her motivation for not wanting an external review? I mean, maybe there might be she might be hiding one specific thing, and that maybe is why.
I definitely feel like she's absolutely hiding something.
Well, I guess if in the course of trying to fight this external review, she's causing way more problems than the review itself would cause, I think. And maybe that's the point. But we'll definitely get to that in a minute.
Yes, I think let's get through the rest of the episode and then we can come back.
So, Osha finally puts on some clothes that actually look like Star Wars, though the shoulders are insane. It's almost the opposite of the last costume. His last costume, it was like had big slits on her shoulders, and now there's too much shoulder. It looks like a woman's blazer from the 80s with the big shoulders. But that's not what's important here. What's important here is as they get on the ship, someone is creepily watching them. And we first see his hand with really big fingies. We got Teethies and fingies, but we actually know this guy's name, presumably. Mm-hmm. Do you wanna talk about that?
We get our first live action look at what appears to be Darth Plagueis, which is a wild turn of events.
Yeah.
Because if you haven't seen Star Wars, Darth Plagueis is Palpatine's master, and he is the infamous. Have you ever heard of the tragedy of Darth Plagueis? It's
about him.
It's about him.
Yeah.
And Palpatine's like, oh, he was tragically killed by his Padawan. Wink. 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 Who could that have been? And Darth Plagueis is known for allegedly having found a way to save life through the Force or give life.
Create life.
Create
that's
life,
I feel like he's seeking to stop death, and he never achieved that. But on the way there, he did figure out how to create life.
And I have some interesting. We can come back to talk about this when we talk about like final thoughts. But I think that's a very interesting connection. And it does make sense that it's like, okay, so Qimir is probably not operating by himself through this.
Yeah, I mean, we've assumed that he had to have someone who had trained him, who was probably still around.
Yeah.
Because we knew most likely Darth Plagueis was alive during this time.
And
he
actually looks a lot like the book cover counterpart of him.
Well, that's the only reason I know what he looks like.
Yeah, well, can you imagine they just showed up someone random, they're like, that's Darth Plagueis. I'm like, what?
He's got like a name tag on, just so it's really clear. Yeah, I can imagine, general audiences will probably be like, oh, that's the Dark Lord who trained Qimir. Sure. But the fact that he doesn't show up again the rest of the episode would be very confusing, I think, for most audience members.
And we can come back to this, but I saw a couple funny comments because it brings in kind of a thought of, is he training Qimir? I saw someone theorize maybe his master Darth Tenebris sent him to go investigate what Qimir's doing. My favorite answer I think the question was, what do you think? It was like, why do you think Darth Plagueis is here with Qimir? And someone just said, roommate. Which I think that's right. I think that is just very funny. That was the only answer. Roommate.
Yeah, there actually is a meme to be had there of attractive outgoing roommate brings girl home, and then as soon as he leaves, the other roommate comes out.
Peeks around the corner to make sure he can come out and get food.
He's been in his room for 4 days.
He has been. Maybe he's a League of Legends player.
He didn't look like that before making him. It's just 4 days in the cave turned him into that.
Maybe Qimir was like, you should, because he kept telling Osha, oh, you can leave if you want. And he was like, you should leave. My roommate's kind of weird.
So our heroes all end up back. Well, our main characters. Yeah, there's no heroes in Leslie Headland's worldview, apparently.
Except for Basil.
Oh, if that's our purest hero, we're in trouble, man.
We got one at the very end. He's about yay tall.
Well, see, we'll talk about the implications of that. He might also not be, depending on what happens next. But all 4 of our characters end up back.
Soul's trying to find May, and Osha and Qimir are trying to find Soul. Osha ends up encountering May.
Mm-hmm. Men are with the men, and the women are with the women, as it should be.
Oh, gosh. So we get, first of all, we get a look at this place in the daytime.
It is not aged well.
It's not aged well. But so then,
or maybe it has, given that it's been abandoned for like 20-some years.
It had like a giant electrical shock go through.
Yeah, it had a big fire and explosion. So maybe it's doing actually all right.
So Soul and Qimir get into a bit of a tussle, and it's actually, I think it's one of the strongest parts of the episode. This show's strongest part is the choreography and fight scenes.
Yeah, which doesn't bode well for. I don't want to get too much into speaking about if we're talking about this show.
I just thought of a joke.
Go for it.
It's like when people are like, there's better fan-made fights that people make on YouTube, but all it is it's just 3D fight scenes and there's no substance.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. See, I guess I'm split as to how much the good action reflects on the writing of the show. Because on the one hand, one could argue this is just the fight choreographers are good at their job. Like episode 5, the best episode of the show, was directed by a guy who worked on Daredevil, Netflix's Daredevil. And so that made sense why he would have been good at doing that. But there have been lots of, the big popular thing now for any superhero movie, action movie is, we hired the stunt crew from the John Wick movies. And then you still get very generic action. Just because a fight choreographer is good at his job or her job does not mean that the action will inherently be good. You do need whoever's in charge of the narrative, the writers, the directors, need to communicate to the choreographers, how is this action scene serving the narrative? What are these two characters? Because people fighting is not interesting. You can go, hang out downtown on a Friday night and see drunk people fight. What's interesting is, what are these characters' relationship? What are they each trying to achieve through this fight? And I do think, even though the show is incredibly flimsy at times narratively, I do think it does enough to inform these fight scenes, and that is a big reason why the fight scenes are good. Not only because they have really good choreography and a good sense of reality to them, but that the characters are well motivated. We do know why the characters are here. We know who they are. We care about them to some extent. So that's my kind of overview on. I do think that it would be a disservice to how these things are made to say, well, the action is good, and that doesn't mean that's a good show. I do think the show has done a good job of setting up the action scenes so that they are actually compelling on a narrative level. Also, it's really cool when they're Qimir and Soul are fighting on a bridge, and their lightsabers are cutting through pieces of the bridge.
I thought it was gonna fall underneath, and we were gonna get some slapstick humor or something, because this show randomly has that.
Agreed. You want about slapstick humor though? This shot of I went too far back, I think.
But we've got Soul holding his own as usual.
This shot right here of him coming at the camera. There's at about 19 minutes, 14 seconds into the episode.
This is very dramatic.
Qimir runs at the camera and swipes twice without actually interacting with Soul's blade, and then it cuts the next scene, and that's pretty funny.
It is funny.
Anyways, next we get May and Osha hand fighting.
Beefing out, and Osha's pissed. She's pissed at May. She's like, and she's blaming May. She's like, my hate for you ruined my chance of being a Jedi, is essentially what it kind of dumbed down to. So they start
Actually, this is a big answer. They kind of I feel like they kind of gloss over it. It's very fast. But we finally get the answer that we've been looking for of why Osha is not a Jedi. It was because her negative emotions were just too strong. She couldn't let go of them. And that one is a big reason why the Jedi don't train people past a certain age, because you just have those
Gosh, the second they hit puberty, they just start thinking for themselves.
And especially in this circumstance, not only was she too old, but she had a very traumatic experience. And then
traumatic.
It does not help that they lied to her.
What do you think her coworkers are thinking at this moment? Osha's been gone for like 3 weeks.
Yeah, that kind of felt like it was going to be more important to her as a character. And then nothing about that opening bit with her as a mechanic is at all relevant to the overall show.
If one of my coworkers didn't show up for 3 weeks, I would literally be like, do we need to go check on them? I guess the last thing they saw was her getting arrested by the Jedi, so they probably think she's been jailed or something. Anyways, sorry, side tangent.
No, you're good.
So they're beefing, they're fighting, and May, I must have looked away. She gets out, and so Qimir and Soul are kind of not at a standstill, but May comes out to this central area, and May starts goading Soul into telling what happened.
Well, before we get there, just real fast, I want to talk about some more technical stuff about this fight. I really appreciate technical elements. I think that that should be pointed out. I'm a huge fan of editing, clever editing, fun editing. Osha and May come at each other with their legs, and they both cross legs, and then it cuts to on that shot from the side shot of Soul and Qimir the classic crossing of the blades. That's a really fun way to transition. I think one of the best things about Star Wars is the intercutting of action. After Episode 4, almost every Star Wars movie, the final climax is at least 2 or 3 different things happening at the same time, and so it takes a lot of thought to properly transition between those different things, and that's just a really fun way to do that. Another thing I wanted to point out was they are really hammering home that Osha and May have swapped places to some degree. Osha is in the dark wear, May is wearing white. May now has Pip with her. Still has the red eyes, but it actually tries to attack Osha.
We find. I guess it does pay off. The little liquid he spat at May in Episode 6.
He does here again against May or Osha. Also, Osha is on a war path here, and May is a lot more subdued and not nearly as diabolical. And once we get to the conclusion of that, we can talk about how we feel about that. But yeah, so they do end up in the courtyard. As you were saying, Osha is behind Soul. Soul does not realize it, and May is trying to get Soul to finally confess in front of her, unknowing to him.
And he does.
And okay, sorry, real fast. One last technical element for the fight. Soul is trying to. They're fighting, obviously.
He's trying to push Chimir's blade back into his helmet, isn't he?
Yeah, Qimir is trying to push so they've kind of crossed different directions.
FYI, whenever we do this, Cameron always has it in front of him.
Yeah.
So he's the one going frame by frame.
Yes. Well, it's just there's cool stuff in here. If this is where the show is good, this is the stuff we should be talking about. At least on the positive side. Well, plenty of negative stuff to talk about in a moment.
This is why I go in general, and Cameron's like, actually.
I like this fight scene a lot. Soul's trying to bring his lightsaber back to himself, and Qimir catches it with kind of hooks it with his blade and is trying to pull Soul's blade into his helmet so that it will
shatter.
Disable it for a moment. And in doing so, Soul does the thing that I feel like every Star Wars fan is like, why does this not happen more? He turns it off. He just turns his lightsaber off.
It's not the first time we see it because Luke did it in Last Jedi, but...
Or Kylo did it in Last Jedi. When does Luke do it?
I mixed up my name.
Yeah, okay. Because Luke does not actually fight with his lightsaber in Last Jedi. Anyways, so regardless, that actually does result in Soul breaking Qimir's lightsaber, and then May steals Soul's lightsaber, throws it, and kind of breaks it.
Oh, yeah.
Exposing the
crystal.
The crystal. Then we get her goading him into telling the truth, and he's very hesitant to do so. This is where he finally actually reveals that May and Osha are not twins. They are literally the same person. Like
that they were created.
Soul reveals that they're the same person, refuses to elaborate.
Yeah.
It's just like, what does that exactly mean? I think we can extrapolate that.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, you can go.
I think just we can extrapolate that using the Force. Okay, there's one of two possibilities. Either they birthed a child and then used the Force to duplicate that child. Like her mothers did actually give birth to one of them, or
I don't think so because I can't remember the names. I'm so sorry. Kind of Dathomirian mother. She very specifically says in episode 3 that she carried them.
Oh, interesting. I forgot about
very
that.
Very specifically indicates she carried them, multiple.
So okay, here'd be my second guess, is they were trying to create life, and just as things go, when in real life, when twins are born, they're not born on purpose. Just like the natural cycle of life just sometimes creates twins. And that either they did something wrong. I don't think they intended to create twins. And because they were using it's a pure Force child.
Yeah.
When it split, it did split. So like I don't really know what this ultimately means, that they're the same person. But I think perhaps we don't have all the information yet, because this show is very much setting up a season 2, and there's probably more information to be had. But regardless, that is the big reveal, is that they are not just twins. But I guess that just further illustrates to them, they don't know how they were created, I think. They don't realize they're not. Mm-hmm. They don't know about themselves, how special they are. And he's trying to reveal that to them. But regardless, Soul turns around and realizes that Osha heard what's said, and she starts force choking him.
And he sure didn't explain why either. I killed your mother. I'm so sorry. I feel like, you could have said, I thought she was going to kill us. May conveniently, both of them conveniently leaving out, she turned into a giant shadow demon.
Mm-hmm. Well, it was a huge misunderstanding, and it's much, much, much more than just I killed your mother. It wasn't like we showed up and just murdered everyone. No, there was a fight.
Yeah.
And while what he did was ultimately wrong, there is a reasoning to it. It was not cold-blooded murder. But the very cool shot here is that as she is choking him, we see the kyber crystal. She's holding Soul's lightsaber. And it turns red, the kyber crystal.
So the first time we see someone bleeding a kyber crystal in live action.
Yeah, so this is the classic. It actually is canon that this is how red lightsabers, there are not naturally growing red crystals. They are corrupted crystals, which further shows that the dark side is objectively bad.
If you have to torture your kyber crystal to get it to change colors, that's kind of bad. Mm-hmm. Be nice to the semi-sentient rocks.
Mm-hmm. And then we get also another amazing shot of she ignites it to threaten Qimir, and the blade comes out blue and then gradually becomes red, which left out something that I thought would have been really cool, which is a fight where the blade stays kind of in the middle to further illustrate her
it's like a popsicle
challenge. Yeah, not her challenge, popsicle. But her conflicted nature. Mm-hmm. But then it goes totally red, showing that in the rest of the episode, she is just not, she's all for joining Qimir, which I feel kind of comes out of nowhere.
I'm ready to talk about that. But the other thing that has happened, at least I believe at this point, is that throughout this, Vernestra and the squad of 10, 15 Jedi have landed, and it's a fighting force. And so Vernestra obviously has a very strong connection to the Force, as we see later who trained her, so we're not all that surprised. The second she steps foot on Brendok, she senses the Force, and she makes a connection to Qimir and says immediately, you. And Qimir, I don't know, it wasn't, to me, it was a very fearful response. He grabs his helmet and snaps it back on and dips.
Yeah, that's a good observation, I think.
Which gives a very interesting suggestion on not only is it a sensory deprivation helmet, does it block him from being sensed?
Well, he actually did say that.
Oh, he did say that
in episode 5, and I forgot to.
I'm stupid.
No, you're fine. It was a very fast line a few weeks ago. I think, pretty sure he told Sol it keeps you out.
It says he yoinked that, and he dipped. So, very interesting.
And to skip a little bit ahead, we do learn by the end of the episode that he was her apprentice.
Which, there are a lot of theories that his scar potentially came from a lightsaber whip, which it looks like that. So,
well, this is very likely now.
Very likely.
So it seems like.
Hi, Darth Teethies. That's Athena.
She
not Qimir.
Had a very similar. Qimir had an incredibly similar circumstance of what happened with May or with Osha. I do want to say this real fast. It is very weird that she does not get a fight by the end of this season.
Yeah.
They established. No, okay. I do know it ultimately is just fan service. She's from the High Republic books and comic books, I assume. She's kind of famous for her purple lightsaber whip. They showed that in episode 6 or 7. So to establish ignoring the fan service element, which is what it is, from a narrative level, to establish that just this character has this weapon and then not give her any fight by the end feels so bizarre.
I mean, I think she's had fights before, so it's just...
Well, in this show though, like if you're just looking at this show, it just feels like it's sequel bait, it's fan service, it's all the annoying things. And as much as I like that final battle, it ends before the second half of this episode, which to me there should have been another fight. There needed to be some other fight, and Vernestra versus Qimir would have been great personally, or Vernestra versus Sol.
See, yeah, I have thoughts, so we can get to that, but
you know, that's what could have been.
Osha ends up killing Sol, choking him to death. Which is a very interesting response where Sol is like, he's like trying to, I don't know if he's like trying to comfort her in this, or if he's trying to save his own skin by calming her down. It's kind of like not clear, but so she ends up killing him. And so then...
Well, he says it's okay.
Yeah,
is the last thing he says. Him and Torben's willingness to just accept death, that doesn't feel very Jedi to me. Sacrificing yourself is one thing, but
there's no greater there's no greater privilege than to join the Force or whatever, something Jedi mantra, something.
I understand they were all. I think there would have been a better sense, and maybe this is the implications. They're all trying to protect the Jedi Order. It actually was a quote unquote selfless act to hide, but they would only be reporting to the other Jedi. So to me, it feels kind of out of character for these characters to keep this secret for so long. I think there could have been a little bit more of it to emphasize that they were protecting the Jedi Order, maybe. It just makes them feel so selfish to me. Like it's a little much that all the characters are so selfish to keep this secret. But I do think though, on the other hand, though, Sol up until the end was very adamant that he did the right thing. Like the best, and I thought that was actually very interesting. That did make him a more complex character. He had a little bit of an ego around it, because continuing to emphasize he did the right thing was not going to convince anyone. Those particular people, he was not going to convince them he did the right thing. He needed a different tactic. But regardless, he ends up dead.
Rest in pieces.
I guess maybe he hoped that would bring peace to Osha, but he should know better. Yeah. The whole thing we talked about last week, killing, that is going to lead Osha down a very bad path, which we're seeing. And am interested to see if the show ends up being a tragedy, of it ends up being that everyone gets killed. Because, like, these characters can't live for that long unless they just kind of run off and live by themselves.
We're going back to Tatooine. They're actually neighbors with Owen and Beru. It's like way later.
But it might just end up that they end up dying. So, I mean, I just skip ahead a little bit just to wrap this up. Osha haggles with Qimir to let May go free. And
which is I kind of, it's weird that the show kind of, it doesn't make you forget that Chimir's trying to kill May.
Yeah.
But it's like he had quite a bit of opportunity to do that, but I guess if he's trying to do this new path of Osha's probably the better acolyte. I probably shouldn't kill her sister in front of her. But yeah, I guess
that would have also been another good. I do feel like there's a fight missing from this last half of this episode. That would have been interesting, of Qimir trying to kill May and Osha defending him, but like not as the 3-way fight, but kind of like Osha caught in the middle. That would have been very visually cool, I think. And then when see, that would make her decision way more clear, is that she doesn't necessarily want to join him, but she realizes the only way I can free May is to go with him. That would have made it feel so much better. That would have felt more like a sacrifice. Here it just feels like I got my whole life's been shook. It was kind of like someone who like loses all of their beliefs and just goes with the first like thing that comes along.
Yeah.
It just felt very rushed and very sudden, which is weird for a show that's 8 episodes and has felt so drawn out for the final bit to feel rushed. Oof.
So basically, long story short, I feel like Osha and May escape, and May shows Osha how she survived the fall. Down that pit, she got sucked into some exhaust tunnel and came out the other side, and they end up at the tree that we see in episode 3. Yes. That first tree, or maybe in the first episode. I don't remember a whole. I don't remember a whole lot from the beginning of the show. They're having this weird moment where, not weird, but they're like portraying that obviously everything Osha believed is now turned upside down. So she's very distraught, and May has this, I feel like May has a very weird response, because she's like comforting her sister, but it's also like she's got this weird happiness about her. Like, it's in her facial expressions that it's like she's just glad that she has her sister on her side again, which I mean, that was May's goal for quite a while. And then Qimir shows up, and I just feel like we just have a really long time dedicated to them trying to figure out what they're going to do, because obviously the Jedi are hunting them down. And so they make the decision that Osha will go with Qimir in exchange for May, but they're like, well, May, if we, you can't give us up, it's going to be bad. And so Qimir wipes May's memory.
And just real fast, a small detail that I feel is important, but it totally confuses me, is right before Qimir shows up, they're doing their rhyme that they always did. You're with me
Shining
and I'm with
twins.
you. They say, who taught us that? And one of them says, I thought you made it up. And then they're interrupted by Qimir. Is the implication that there's like, Plagueis taught it to them or something? Like, it feels like they're...
Wait, what? Plagueis?
No, I'm saying, like, it feels like they are implying that something else that we have not seen.
Oh,
it would not have been Qimir. So, like, I just feel like there's an implication.
They've been saying this as a child since.
What they said, I'm trying to figure out, is what is the point of this exchange, where she says, who taught us that? And she says, I thought you came up with it. So the question, who taught us that? The who seems to be like, I'm drawing connections. I'm grasping at straws here because I don't understand.
Maybe it's something that I don't know, and I'm probably gonna sound insane for this, because they are the exact same person. Maybe they both made it up, and so they just know it in their head. So that's why they say it to each other.
Interesting. Okay, so that brings up a big point that I had earlier that goes over the whole show. Is this show is really bad at revealing information, like really, really bad. I think the biggest one is the reveal that Saul the way May or Osha learns that Soul killed her mother, I think the show would have been incredible. One of two things. Either you give us all the information at the beginning and then we can actually properly watch the show, or, which I understand is the writers want to put us, the audience, in the shoes of the main character, which is totally understandable. I totally get that. So then we should not learn what happened until Osha does, which means, and this would solve another huge issue. The two worst episodes of the show are the flashback episodes. We should not see those flashbacks until they are intercut with the final. Imagine if in the final episode we were cutting back and forth between them fighting and the fight that happened.
That would
in
also
the past.
require them to have a runtime more of 32 minutes.
Yeah, I think they could have spaced episodes out differently, and they could have managed it. You're totally right. But then as Osha is
Disney,
learning...
why are we afraid of 35 minutes of actual show?
Yeah. I think it would have been super impactful to, as Osha learns it, we are seeing it. And that's the moment the show has been leading to, rather than just dropping it on us in episode 7 in a really lackluster episode. We see it
of the
when
two
it's
conflicting
relevant.
of the Jedi killed my family versus your sister started a fire that killed everyone. To have that same reveal would have probably had the same emotional gut punch it was supposed to have been.
Exactly, because it didn't really affect me. I didn't really feel it when it happened in the flashback episode, but there it would have been great because the way it's presented, neither scene has its full impact. The scene where we see Saul kill their mother just kind of feels like it comes and goes without much, especially because it feels like he's kind of justified, at least understandable in his action. And then the moment that Osha learned, it just feels like, well, this is inevitable. This is going to happen eventually. But if they were combined, I think they would amplify each other. So similarly, I think you're somewhat right. I think there's a good chance you're right about that line about, I thought you made it up, who taught us that. That line would have made sense if it came before we learned that they were they were the same person. Coming after, what does it mean? It doesn't mean anything. But if it came before, it's foreshadowing.
I feel like that fact they heard it and it went one ear and out the other probably because there's a lot going on at the time. But they might have also copped it up to crazy old Jedi who killed our mom.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm glad that we talked about this, even just to remind me of the point of they could have revealed all the information in a much better way. And I'm not even asking them to change the show. If they do what I said about the editing.
Just change some of the editing and pacing.
Yeah, the exact same footage you already have, just mix it up a bit, it works so much better. So that's probably one of my biggest observations about the show. But then as they are hugging, which actually watching it now, I do think this is probably the strongest bit of acting from the actress playing May and Osha.
I do want to know who she's hugging.
The body double.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I do think the tears look very real. And she is playing each character different. Mm-hmm. Like, you're right. You totally read it right. May feels very at peace about it because she has achieved her goal. And Osha is totally in turmoil
she's been
because
ripped apart.
And this is a show that in the moment, it's kind of the reverse of kind of what I want is most media, I'm fine if it works for me while I'm watching it and later it doesn't make much sense if I'm thinking about it, that's fine with me. This is almost the opposite of while you're watching it, it's kind of annoying, but the more I think about it, the more I'm like, actually, that kind of works. It's weird. And I think the show actually will probably really benefit from a second watch all the way through. I actually think I would really love to watch it edited together with like no credits, no title sequences, just all together as a movie. Mm-hmm. But regardless, in this final hug, Qimir wipes May's memory, and then they leave as the Jedi show up.
And the Jedi arrest May.
Yes. And she clearly has no memory. I wonder... I mean, they take her into custody, but like, I wonder what actually convinces them. I guess they can sense her intentions, so if she were lying, they'd be able to tell. And this gives Vernestra... they end up pinning the whole thing on Soul. Is the final point here.
Soul made a mistake and killed someone, and it led to the revenge of this person trying to kill other Jedi. Actually, blame it on all four of them. Actually,
the official story from Vernestra and the Jedi is that Soul killed all of the other Jedi to cover up the murder.
When the truth was
of the witches, of the lesbian witch coven. And this ends up giving us a lot of time with Vernestra, which is a good time to talk about, I think.
And the last, real quick, before we talk about Vernestra, because we talk about her a lot. The last we see of Osha and Qimir is they're back on that ship. They're back on that planet, Chimir's planet, whatever.
Yes.
And they're looking off into the sunset. And the music kind of swells really darkly, dramatically. And they hold hands. And then it cuts. It fades to black. Or it cuts to black and then fades out to Vernestra, I think.
Yeah. Actually, I quite like this. I like the music in this episode quite a bit, actually.
You know what? I was just thinking, actually, because I am a big...
It's pretty good. I like it.
I was going to say, I've talked about music all the time on this show. Mm-hmm. This was the first time in an episode of this season that I went, oh, the music.
Yeah, I agree. Something special about this particular episode, I think.
Well, yes, but I just don't think the music has as big a part in this show other Star Wars projects. Mm-hmm. Not to be like, it's not like Star Wars, but audio and sound plays a very important part in any visual media. I'm just going to use a couple examples out of Star Wars. Twin Suns in A New Hope. That is like one of the most monumental music moments in Star Wars. Duel of the Fates, Phantom Menace.
Yep, absolutely.
The Return of the Jedi, depending on which version you watched, the first one or the old one, the end of Return of the Jedi does have a very big music component.
Team Yub Nub all the way.
Yeah, Team Yub Nub. Attack of the Clones.
I thought you hated Yub Nub.
I was being very much sarcastic.
Oh.
I don't know if Empire Strikes Back has a really big musical component, probably because I don't really watch that.
Oh, man, the chase music?
That's what I was thinking, the chase music, like the space chase music.
So good.
You have Across the Stars.
Also, Imperial March is first in Empire Strikes Back.
Really?
So
you guys can tell how often I rewatch Empire Strikes Back. It's kind of low on my preferred Star Wars list. Across the Stars, Attack of the Clones. The battle on Mustafar between Obi-Wan and Anakin, and then the sequel trilogies have great music. Rey's theme is Kylo Ren's theme is also the character themes are killer. One of my favorite tracks in The Last Jedi is when Luke Skywalker goes out to confront Kylo Ren. That's great. Rise of Skywalker, I don't remember a whole lot of the music.
I haven't really listened to it much. I assume it's kind of probably like the rest of the movie, pretty
March of the Resistance.
Yeah, the March of Resistance theme is great. Yeah.
And in the shows, you have, of course... Sorry, I'm going to talk about music, so this is my thing right now. You have...
Rachel's music moment.
Yeah, my music moment. In The Mandalorian, obviously, you have the Mandalorian theme. Dun, 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 that's very iconic to the show. In Book of Boba Fett, say what you want about the show, I loved the theme for Book of Boba Fett. It's by the same person of Mandalorian, and then you have...
Boba.
Yes. And then
we forgot about that. We were talking about last episode how the last episode of the Acolyte ended with a song with lyrics, but the Book of Boba Fett had the same instrumental theme through the whole thing, but in the last episode they added his name
Boba Fett as
lyrics. That's again, say what you will about the show. That is a amazing way to end that show. That is so cool.
Yes. Having a random pop song, because it was already incorporated into the show as the theme, but then having the new pop song at the end was like, oh, okay. And then you have, talk about it. Andor. Woo! Andor has amazing musical themes. You have heroes from the jailbreak. Mm-hmm. You have the music that plays during Kino Loy's speech. Mm-hmm. You have, honestly, the bar music that we hear in the first episode. It's such a fun little bop.
Which then showed up in Mandalorian season 3, right?
I can't remember if it was the exact. Did we determine if it was the exact same?
I think it was.
I think maybe we did. Or it's very similar. It's in universe, and then the end track during Marva's eulogy is strong, and then you have Ahsoka.
I've not actually gone back and listened to any Ahsoka music. Is it good? You like it?
I have my favorites, but you have my favorites out of Ahsoka are the hyperspace jump. If you want to hear me talk about the hyperspace jump music for like 15 minutes on this podcast, you can go back and listen to that episode. We covered it. Very whimsical. We've talked about the ending of Ahsoka, which brought back an unused track from Rebels. Qimir music is great. It themes. Clone Wars has a very, very popular theme. It's very iconic. Rebels has some absolutely gorgeous music, even across all 4 seasons. And then I have not really listened to a whole lot of the music from Kenobi, but there are a couple tracks that I do really like.
What did you? So I'm wanting to add it to my playlist. What did you say was the really good one from Ahsoka? Was it?
So this is my personal preference.
Yeah.
But it's the hyperspace jump.
Hyperspace jump. Okay.
And epilogue part 2.
Cool.
Now and then we rag on the Bad Batch. We have done that a lot. It has not lacked in the music department. Omega's theme.
You want to talk about sound effects? Athena has decided I don't think she's ever done this before.
Because she normally walks over and complains that you've turned her water off.
Because she loves a little water fountain. She likes moving water, but she must be a thirsty girl.
She must be desperate.
Anyways,
Omega's theme from the Bad Batch is it's pure whimsy. The Bad Batch theme, just in and of itself, it's very short, but it's iconic. All that to say, the fact and correct me if I'm wrong, maybe you guys like some of the music and let me know, because I'd be very interested to see what tracks other people have liked. The fact that this was the first time I think I was sitting in an episode of The Acolyte and went, oh, the music is kind of interesting.
I feel like episode 1 or 2 had
maybe
one track that stuck out to me, but that was over a month ago, so I don't remember. But
just,
for
all that
by and large, yeah.
All that to say, music's been a very large part of Star Wars, and it was very interesting, like sitting back and reflecting and being like, "Wow, I don't actually know if I'd listen to this track, if I would listen to this soundtrack." Mm-hmm. Anyways, go listen to Eulogy by Nicholas Bertel, from Andor. Anyways, that's just me. If anyone would like my recommendations on what Star Wars songs to listen to, please let me know. Leave us a comment.
So to wrap up the discussion
It's good.
I'm happy to let you go off about the music. I think it's great. Back to the episode though. We talked about Qimir and Osha run off together.
Vernestra.
And we were talking about Vernestra. Yes.
Sorry, I went on a big tangent.
I teased this to you before that there was some tea. It's more just like a moment, but in reality, I learned that Vernestra, the actress who plays Vernestra, is married to the creator of the show, Leslie Headland. The fact that it's 2 women is not what I'm pointing out. The fact that this important character is married to the creator of the show is not inherently bad. I think if someone's right for the role, they're right for the role. It doesn't matter if they're super close to the creator or not. If they're good, I mean, and people write parts for certain actors. That's also fine. My problem is this character is not interesting enough to have as much space as they have. Vernestra, it's partially the performance.
I wonder if they made her very blank because she still has stuff that will happen to her in the books.
That's possible. Well, she obviously has a lot that's going to happen in season 2. She's obviously now become...
She's probably the main character.
She
Jedi.
is like one of the antagonists of the show now. And she is just not interesting enough for that. And it's kind of like, casting is hard. There's so many options. There's so many people, so many actors. To find the right person is a very difficult task, and I understand that. But you make it so much harder when you just cast someone that's super close to you, specifically your wife. And I don't think it's a horrible performance. I think this would work if it was a character who was just around. But as someone that is now supposed to be kind of the equivalent of what is the woman who is the Imperial ISB officer in Andor? Deidre. That's the performance. What an incredible performance of someone who is like conniving and scheming.
I can't believe we got to see the glass ceiling still existing in Andor.
But that performance could be really bland. But that actress brings so much to that role. And I think the actress playing Vernestra is not... I don't think... Again, it's not a bad performance. I think she she's bringing a sense of like superiority. Like
there's room to grow.
She's not giving bad line delivery. It's just like, this is not it for this character who's going to be this important. Like,
I saw a Twitter thread that I didn't get to read, but someone asked, and they're like, okay, I haven't read the High Republic books. For those who have, how does this portrayal of Vernestra stick out? How does it work? And I didn't read the thread because I don't know how many comments there were on it, but I'd like to go back and read it because that's a very good point. Because for the people, almost every person I see praises the High Republic books.
Cool.
And so I'm very interested to see what the people who really love the books think about this portrayal.
Yeah, when I had not given a lot of thought to the performance, I was like, whatever on it. But the moment I learned that she was, it just annoys me. And it's just kind of like...
Nepo spouse?
Kind of. So I guess my ultimate point is she really will have to step it up. Both the writing and the performance will have to really step it up in the next season. This is where we get the information that she actually shares with, I believe, with May, that they're going to go looking for her apprentice.
Yeah.
She is pretty much recruiting May to help her hunt down Qimir and Osha.
And essentially, it's a switch of what the show started with.
Which, to me, is a little annoying. I think it would be much more compelling if May had actually been convinced this is actually the better way to go. Her just being mind wiped means that, like, next season, they're actually going to theoretically go through the same thing again. That I don't love the idea that we have a main character who also, so this season, Osha had to learn what really happened. Next season, May will have to learn what really happened. And maybe...
They've both been lied to twice.
Yeah.
And they're in the same position.
And theoretically, I don't think it's a great idea, but honestly, almost the best case scenario is that the mind wipe just wears off really fast in the next season. The most interesting outcome from my perspective right now is that she learns the truth, but because she actually had it wiped from her mind, she's actually able to let go and forgive, and she ends up actually siding with the Jedi at the end of the show of... She actually does have a lightness to her. She actually does have a forgiveness of like, yes, they were wrong, but I'm choosing to forgive them. Unlike Osha, who seemingly can't forgive whoever's fault it was. She can't seem to forgive them. That would be an interesting outcome. And again, that could create a really bad season though for May, because we've made fun of May for being an absolute psychopath, but now she's just going to be a blank slate. I don't love that. I'm not a huge fan of characters who've had their memory wiped, resulting in them having not much personality. Also, I don't feel like, at least the way this is depicted here at the end, it doesn't feel like Osha has much of a personality anymore. I think, again, the show has a lot of interesting ideas. I am super excited to see more Qimir. I'm super excited to see how that plays out with Vernestra. I think once their inevitable fight will be cool. And we'll talk about here, so we're talking about the next season. The show ends with Vernestra going to report to Yoda. We see the back of Yoda very quick. This seems, again, every time, Rachel, every time. The show,
I gotta do every time.
With its parallels between the two narratives, we have a small glimpse of Darth Plagueis, and we have a small glimpse of Yoda. The two seemingly ancient. I don't know how old Plagueis is. He's probably pretty old, I would assume. At least just very powerful, lurking in the shadows, controlling things. It kind of seems like they're positioning Yoda and Plagueis to be parallels to each other. So the question will be, how much does Yoda know? This will be the big question. Because as of right now...
I'm going to see Yoda start developing like dementia or something at the end of season 2, and that's why he's no help in the prequels.
That's hilarious. Because obviously the big complaint people had about this is it really seems to retcon everything that was known in episode 1. The idea was that the emergence of the Sith in episode 1 is a huge deal that has not happened in thousands of years. This show is completely contradicting that, and the question is, how much did the Jedi know? I think it's super compelling that they covered up. I think it's super compelling. Yeah. And I think the deeper it goes, the more compelling it is, actually. But, because also, here's something I want to say about that. I had this thought the other day, or yesterday, because the episode came out last night. While I don't want this, I think it's really easy to slip into just coloring characters as wholly good or wholly bad. Absolutely not. Yoda and Obi-Wan are definitely, in the end, good, the positive characters. They're fighting for good. They have good intentions. They desire to protect peace and life, and that is a good thing. But they also are a little too committed to the Jedi way. And they do spend a lot of their time with Luke filling his head with half-truths.
Qui-Gon was a good Jedi.
Well, that's an interesting example of... That was something I thought about this show, is I think this show could have used a good Jedi, and the closest was Sol.
Maybe Count Akka was the good Jedi, and we just didn't get to see him.
True. He did not have enough of a chance to be the good Jedi. Yeah. But Obi-Wan and Yoda... And it was not necessarily intended that Obi-Wan was lying to Luke, because it was not really intended that Anakin and Vader were the same person. That was not the original thought. But it retroactively, that is what's happening. Is that from the beginning, Obi-Wan is lying to Luke. And then they're keeping from him that he has a sister. Which, again, was not the original intention. That was written later. But let's not pretend like George Lucas did not write the prequels. This show is pretty much just the prequels all over again. It's just doubling down. It's just going more into the corruption of the Jedi. Mm-hmm. But that is 100% George Lucas's intention, is that the Jedi were not all good. That they were flawed. They were too powerful. They had power for too long. They had it is not an accident that at the end of the prequels, the Force is balanced by there being 2 Sith and 2 Jedi. That is not an accident. People, I think, kind of want to ignore what George Lucas wrote, and this show is just taking that further. So my point
is... This show has actually incorporated quite a bit of Legends material, too.
Yeah, so you got his Chimir's armor. What else?
Darth Plagueis.
Oh, yep.
Technically.
Yep. Yeah, his appearance. Yeah.
Yes.
He existed as a character, but yeah, his exact species and how he looks is Legends. That's right. Yeah.
I think technically speaking, bleeding a kyber crystal had origin.
You think so?
I think might have had origins in Legends, because we've not, unless it's happened in a book, and if it has, tell me.
Yeah.
But we absolutely haven't seen it in animation or any of the live action.
Yeah, I feel like there was another thing of... We looked up Vergence was from episode 1, but there was something along those lines of like a force power or an idea or concept.
Oh, one thing I wanted to mention was it's a great thing that Vernestra was the only one that can sense force memories.
Oh, yeah, we kind of skipped over that.
On the planet, because there were 10, 15 other Jedi, and she allegedly seems to be the only one that was able to see all of the memories, see what, granted it's memories, so it's not the full truth, see what happened, craft her own response, unless someone else did and asked her, and she's like, oh no, this is obviously what happened. But I just happen to think, it's not like a super popular... Leia actually has it in the comics.
Oh, okay.
Cal Kestis very obviously has it, and he has it very strongly. But yeah, I did think that. I'm like, wow, sure is lucky she's the only one that can take a look around and figure out what happened.
Yeah, and to further elaborate on that is how she knows what happened with the group of Jedi 20 years or so ago where they killed all the witches. Is when they show up to that site in this episode, she can sense everything.
Those memories from so long ago.
Yeah. And so that's a really good point to bring up. And yeah, if anyone else were there, but also, yeah, I guess the only person who would have been able to contradict the whole narrative that she's construing is her Padawan, because they were the only two who went to the site of the first Qimir fight, because she told the truth about what happened there on Brindok. The lie is that Sol killed all the other Jedi just a few days prior on the other planet. That's the lie that they're telling. Yeah. But that also brings up, the thing I was going to say is there's who's in on the lie? Who all knows the truth? Vernestra, Osha, Qimir, and Basil. That's a weird dangling thread. That he knows what happened. He was there.
Maybe he's actually Darth Tenebris.
It's just, is that just going to be overlooked, or is that going to be a plot point in season 2 of Vernestra trying to kill Basil?
That actually might be the worst thing they could do.
Just like more, they just double down on all the shenanigans of someone chasing Basil.
Basil's the one that tells Vernestra like what happened between Sol and Master. Oh my god.
There's just 3 episodes of Vernestra chasing him around the Jedi temple and this like random shenanigans happening. The show is such a mixed bag, but it was fun to talk about. It was fun. We had a good time. The peaks were very high. I think we absolutely have to give them credit for that. It's not an accident. Yes. It does resemble, actually, I think it very strongly resembles Clone Wars Season 7. There's some really bad stuff, and there's some really good stuff, and there's some stuff in the middle. Any other final notes? Oh, I just wanted to finish what I was talking about real fast. I wanted to finish what I was saying earlier about the Jedi and George Lucas definitely, his writing of the Jedi showed that Jedi are really willing to bend the truth and do what they are in justify the means in the end. A lot of Jedi are. And they will tell half-truths. They will straight up lie in order to protect the Jedi. So Vernestra doing this is not that much of a surprise. And the question that bleeds into, what does Yoda know? What does Vernestra tell Yoda? And
they're both green.
Presumably she would just lie to him. But it will be interesting to see whether Yoda actually knows the whole truth or not. Because it would be very odd if Vernestra just straight up lies. Because it's not like she's bending the truth when she says that Soul killed that's a straight up lie. It's 100% a lie. And unless she's convinced herself of it, okay, here's the thing. When they went to the site of the first Qimir fight, there wasn't a sense that she was 100% sensing what had happened. Because it was her
I got the feeling that I really thought, because of the theories that Qimir might be her apprentice, I think she acted like she was hiding information because obviously, how does it come off? The other Jedi was like, what happened? Could this have been Soul? Well, unfortunately, it's a bit of a lose-lose situation for Vernestra. Oh, no, it wasn't Soul. It was actually my former Padawan who killed all these people. Just the way she was reacting and sensing the information seemed like she very much, or seemed maybe to have some suspicions, or maybe when he suggested that, she was able to take that and go, that sounds good. That sounds good than the potential truth that might actually be out there.
I feel like the show's actually kind of put itself in a lose-lose situation. There's two scenarios. Either one, as soon as she stepped foot in the first battle zone, she knew it was Qimir who killed those Jedi, and she was planning on covering that up from the beginning. And then whenever she learned that Soul was dead and had killed the witches, she had her cover story, so she's just straight up lying. In which case, it will be very strange for Yoda to not sense that lie, if that's where they go. And for the other Jedi, I feel like it should be so hard to die. I mean, unless the Jedi are so blind from one another, it feels like it should be hard to, unless she's really good at, she might be really good at masking it. It could be something with her species. It could be one of her force powers that she can block her intentions. I don't know. But that seems to be a stretch to me. The alternative is she did not realize that it was Qimir.
Until
if she did realize it was Qimir, her reaction to sensing Qimir on Brindok in the final episode is very odd then.
Unless it was like a confirmation of her.
Yeah,
true, I guess you're right.
It seems to be very muddled what exactly she's able to do, because she seemed to be able to very much be able to sense what happened with the witches very clearly.
True.
Which happened 15 to 20 years ago, but then if she didn't know it was Qimir, she wasn't able to sense something that happened as a few days prior. So it's kind of mixed. Like, either direction you go, there's some inconsistencies.
They didn't stick around very long either.
It's possible, and I don't know. It seems kind of unclear what she knows, what she doesn't know, what she's lying about, what she's not lying about. Either direction, to me, has its questions. And it wouldn't be that big of a deal if the show concluded, but because this is another season, this is very much going to influence what happens in the next season. So I guess we'll see. What's interesting, we're also in a situation now. It's so interesting how similar the show is to Ahsoka as well. Have we ever really had? Oh, I guess my question was, has a Star Wars show had such big cliffhangers? Mandalorian Season 2 definitely had the big cliffhanger with Mando and Grogu separating.
But it was a complete story.
The season itself, yeah.
Yes.
I would just in general, Mandalorian itself is kind of episodic. Kenobi has an ending. Boba Fett has an ending. Andor has an ending. But Ahsoka and now Acolyte, they have huge open-ended endings.
And I mean, I think we talked about this a little bit last week, unless we just talked about it by ourselves and didn't record it. Mm-hmm. I enjoyed Ahsoka more than this. Also because I love Rebels, so I'm biased.
That's an interesting question, how they compare. Actually, I wanted to, at the end of this, see where it ranked for us generally in the shows. We don't need to rank all the shows, but just like, what's it better than, what's it worse than?
I think we'll get to that. This is kind of where I'm starting to get my frustrations, where it's like, please stop. It really feels like, please stop that these shows are written with the assumption that they will be getting a second season. Like, oh, we'll just handle this in season 2. Stop it. I'm pretending to spray water like out of a water bottle. I'm not opposed to cliffhangers. What I don't like is the dragging on of a story just for reveals at the end to then be like, oh, stick around for season 2. Like, this is not an after school program.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of where my frustrations are. Like, there's so much dragging on, and then being like, and now that we've laid all this groundwork that probably could have been laid in actually 6 episodes.
Yeah.
Now we're going to have a season 2.
Yeah. To me, we briefly mentioned this idea, and I think it really stuck with me. If Andor were written like Ahsoka and Acolyte, it would have, first season of Andor would have ended with him going to prison. Like, that would have been the end of the first season, right then. And I think we still would have loved the show, but that would have been like, 'cause now knowing what the season was, like, and literally Andor is twice as many episodes. It's like 15 episodes, right?
12.
Oh, 12. Okay. Well, in 12 episodes, they got double out of what they did in 8 in Ahsoka and Acolyte. The show is such a better story. Andor is obviously a much better, and we would have, in the end, like, let's say you just get
Common
those two,
Rebels and Robots win talking about Andor.
On the flip side, you have something like Dune, Part 1 and Part 2. They were released 2 years apart. There was a very slim chance they were not going to make Dune 2. Obviously, if they had not made Dune 2, it would have been horrendous. But they were pretty committed to doing both. What I'm saying is, I'm okay with splitting things up if it is a guaranteed fact that you are going to quickly make the second one. Mm-hmm. Like, that was, I think, what always was the positive of classic television, was that the next season would always come out the next year, almost always. If you did, and shows almost always like this normally got more than one season. There are some shows that didn't, but for the most part, you at least got a second season. In this case, there's no confirmation yet, and there's no confirmation, and because of that, that means they haven't even started on season 2. Like, if at the bare minimum, if we knew they were making season 2, they could have already, like, they would be already now be gearing up for the second season. Now, with how things are with Hollywood and still dealing with, like, COVID issues in certain parts of the world,
Writer strike.
Strikes, it just means that there's no telling that even if they do renew it, 1, if they do renew it, we don't know when they'll start production. 2, the way things go, studios are constantly changing CEOs, and they're rebranding, and they're changing their direction. Even if you want to renew it, it might not get made, because in a year, if you're going to start production a year from now, things, everyone at work running the show might be different. Especially this late in the show, Kathleen Kennedy could retire. Disney has already changed CEOs twice in the last, like, 5 years. Like, it could really go really. My point, I mean, this is a really obvious point. No one's going to disagree with this, but it just, my argument is, you need one or the other. Either you commit to making more than one season so you can do long form storytelling like this, or really commit to one season and then see if people like it enough to make a second season. Mm-hmm. So I'm only agreeing with you. I'm saying that there's 2 paths that I see. Where would you rank it? Like, where, like, it's obviously that neither of us are going to say this is not S tier like Andor, but it's not quite the disaster that Book of Boba Fett was, or it. I don't think it sinks to, like, some of the. I think there are some really low episodes of Andor. No, sorry, not Andor. Mandalorian. Like, because Mandalorian, there are episodes that aren't contributing to the narrative. Like, even the worst episode of Acolyte, in the end, is at least part of a whole. So when you go back and rewatch it, you'll be like, well, I don't love this episode, but it is contributing to this narrative. whereas bad episodes of The Mandalorian are just worthless. Same thing with Kenobi. Even if it has its bad episodes, Kenobi is one narrative. This, to me, feels very much on the same plane in the middle. It's not the worst, it's not the best. I would probably more likely rewatch this before I rewatched most of the other shows, so it probably puts it a little bit higher. Then like I haven't actually gone back and rewatched Kenobi. I'd like to, but I have not felt motivated to. I don't really have much of a motivation to go back and watch Ahsoka. So like I do think this is kind of above those in my mind. What do you think?
Mine's pretty low middle.
Yeah.
For me personally, because we'd have different rankings of the show.
Sure.
To me, it's down there with Kenobi. There were things I really liked about Kenobi.
Yeah.
But the rest of it, I was just like,
yeah,
I don't
fair.
know. And
Totally
it's kind
fair.
of the similar for that with me.
That's fair. I think that's very fair. I think anything that's such a mixed bag.
At the bottom, I do think is Mando season 3. Unfortunately,
That's become a really common take, and that's really interesting to me.
But the things that I really liked about Mando season 3 were very few and far in between.
Sure. That's totally fair.
The Imperial Underground was actually kind of interesting.
Yeah.
That whole episode we watched with the Doctor.
Yeah.
In the New Republic,
Which most people cite as the worst episode.
I know that's.
So
I
weird.
think that's actually the best. You fight me on Twitter.
That's the episode I would go back and rewatch.
Episode.
Yeah.
I remember my mom skipped that one, and I was like, "Oh, actually, that's really the one I care."
Like
about.
you could argue it's a bad episode of The Mandalorian, maybe, but I don't care. It's a great episode of Star Wars television. Period. So yeah, I feel like we're kind of on the same page. I'm just a little more forgiving of the bad parts for the good parts. It sounds like totally fairly you think the bad parts are weighing the show down a bit more, which is totally fair. I think you have to really to like this show, you have to overlook a lot of things or be okay with a lot of things. The Osha May performances, the flashback episodes, Basil.
Which Osha May performances? Like the young kids?
Both. All of it.
Really?
All of Osha and May, in my mind, is not great. The kid performances especially, but that's only 2 episodes. I just think they're kind of bland. I don't think she's necessarily a bad actress. I just don't... The parts that you like of this show are Soul and Qimir.
I feel like, unfortunately, you can tell when people are acting and not responding as characters to a situation.
Like, I even think... I think all of the other Jedi are a lot of fun. Like, Yord... Jackie... Konaka, these are fun characters that I would love to spend. Unfortunately, they're all dead, so I don't get any more time with them. That's the issue with the show. But also, props to the show. So many shows are so unwilling to kill their characters. This show was willing to hire famous actors, spend time with the characters, and then just kill them off permanently, no questions.
Murder child on screen.
So I think the show does deserve props. I think the show tried some new stuff.
Yes, I think the stuff it tried to go into was really great. I think it's kind of overshadowed by its pacing and editing decisions.
Do not disagree. I think those are huge problems. Obviously, we will watch the season 2 if they make it. I think the one benefit of splitting things up is you have a chance to course correct.
Yes.
I would hope that in a season 2 of this show, they'd be like, oh, we know it works. Because, here's the thing I was going to say. According to something I saw, Qimir was originally meant to be a much smaller part of this season.
Interesting.
And because the actor was so good, they wrote more parts, more scenes for him.
Why I feel like sometimes there are just scenes where he's kind of just lurking.
Yeah, I think the original intent was for him to be much more serious.
Was the naked scene supposed to be in there from the start?
My guess would be no. I don't know what specific scenes were added or not added. I just know that.
I'm very curious how that went down. So we're gonna have him naked. What?
And my final note for this is just a little bit more of just an analysis of where the show's going to go, what was its point. I think a big point of this show, at least canonically in the greater scope of Star Wars, is... so a big point of this last episode was Soul, in order to prove that what he did was right, that Osha and May are special characters, are special people, special creatures, creations, he had to prove that there was a vergence on Brendok. And the appearance of Plagueis, the twins, I think a huge part of the show will ultimately be this is how Plagueis learned how to create life.
Yeah, that's what it definitely seems to be.
We might even end up seeing, I don't think, is that vergence? Is that literally how they created Anakin? Like man, I'm really all over the place. We're 100 years before episode 1, which means it's a while before Palpatine is born.
Hear me out. Sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
You continue. You continue.
Well, I'm all over the place. I don't know exactly what to predict, but I feel like the show is. I mean, it's very obvious. The parallels to Anakin are super obvious. But does the show? I feel like the show, as a prequel, is going to attempt to really hammer home this. They're gonna really show this is how Anakin was made. Because I feel like I'm pulling that out of the really heavy focus on the Virgins. Otherwise, the Virgins thing is super weird, and it's really emphasized for no good reason. If not to, Plagueis seems to be the key here for the show's bigger implications for the Star Wars universe.
My thought. This is my prediction. This is what I'm curious about. What we will see. Plagueis.
It's the chair.
Oh.
It sounds like a mouse. That's so.
It does.
Man, we're sound effect heavy on this episode.
My prediction is that with the appearance of Osha and May being truly identical, the same exact person, created through the use of the Force, is that this is going to inspire, obviously, Plagueis figuring out how to create life through the Force and attempting, if life can be created through the Force, perhaps the Force can be used to thwart death. If they, by means of Plagueis and Palpatine, start messing around with this life and death stuff in the Force, my prediction, I would be very interested to see that they actually do not have any hand in creating Anakin. I think it would be very interesting that the Force itself creates Anakin as a chosen one in response to everyone trying to mess with the Force as a way. Why are you?
No. It's funny. The idea of the Force doing it, like the Force is like, y'all can't handle y'all.
No, that's what I'm actually very interested to see. If the Force has finally gone, y'all been messing around too much. So it creates a chosen one to bring balance.
Yeah, no, I think you're 100%. I'm not laughing to make fun of you. I'm laughing because the idea of the Force personified as like just an angry mother who's just like, y'all screwing around too much. I'm going to create Anakin to just deal with the problem is very funny to me.
It won't show up for another 22 years. But.
Yeah. The idea that is creating in my head is, I think what you talked about with them trying to thwart death is really interesting. There's a lot of dead characters in this first season. The idea of like them coming back, like them like somehow traveling to like a spirit realm, or just like
perhaps a world between worlds.
I think the idea of like the show going into a theme of like ghosts, because obviously the characters in this season are very much haunted by the past.
Force ghosts.
I think the idea of like all the witches and all the dead Jedi somehow being brought back, not necessarily literally, but like in a spiritual sense. Like I don't want anyone brought back permanently because that'd be stupid.
All the ghosts of those dead Jedi, they're just gonna haunt May. It's like the ghost sitcom. The couple that moves into the haunted house.
Oh, sure,
and she can see the
Yeah,
ghosts.
yeah.
It's gonna be that. That'd be hysterical.
I think that could be very cool. I think that what you said implanted that in my mind of like just dealing with all the death. That would be a great way to bring back all these great characters that honestly, I think the performances of the witches was really strong. I think because those characters were so poorly written, I think it was really easy to overlook that. Those are very strong characters. Like you got a strong sense of who they were as people and their personalities, and I would like to see them come back. The Jedi are great. Would love to see them come back. I think that could be a very compelling second season of dealing with death and trying to reverse it, and that would very much go with the themes of this season. So that's just off the top of my head, but it's very possible. Any last thoughts on the Acolyte?
It's over.
It is over for the time being, at least, and that means it's time to talk about what we're doing next. I don't have a name for it. I don't know how to, but we are going to be talking about Studio Ghibli films for 3 weeks, 3 episodes, that is. Rachel's pick, my pick, and then one we have never seen before. Rachel, do you want to quickly just, like one sentence, talk about your pick?
I think I'm going to go with From Up on Poppy Hill. Very slice of life, Studio Ghibli.
And I've never seen it, so I'm excited. That will be next episode. That will be July 31st. I know very little about it, so I'm excited to discuss that with you. I always like it when you're passionate about something, Rachel, so it'll be fun to have you talk about that. I'm torn between two. For my pick, I have my favorite one, which is My Neighbor Totoro. Phenomenal film. I think kind of hard to talk about, though, because it's very much a feeling movie.
Cat bus.
There's a lot of fun jokes, for sure. I think we could definitely talk about it, because I mean, you like it, right? You're a fan.
Yeah.
I love it. I wasn't sure exactly where it landed for you. It's one of my favorite movies, probably, period. So we would have definitely a passion for it. But a movie that I more watched recently that I think we would have more to talk about, I think this is why I'm going to choose it, is Princess Mononoke. I don't have a strong...
I haven't seen that one in a while.
So I think that would give us more to talk about. I had a very strong immediate reaction to it. I would like to see how it stands up to rewatch. I would like to watch we'll see. I think it'd be better and easier to talk about. I don't know. Do you think you'd rather watch the dubbed or the subbed version?
I'm personally a subbed person.
Fair enough. Then that's what we should watch. I have not seen the subbed one, so I think that would give me a good point of comparison.
I think subs are better.
Cool. Then that's what we'll do. So I think there'll be a lot to talk about with that. Princess Mononoke. The way I would pitch it, it is the best version of the nature versus people subgenre. Most versions of that genre are bad.
In Godzilla -1 subgenre?
Well, that's a little bit different. That's because in this, it's normally nature is the good guys in this subgenre of like forest spirits, I should say. It's your Avatar, James Cameron's Avatar. It's Fern Gully. It's the animated film Epic. These kind of like but those always take very extremes. What I like about Mononoke is it's much more black and more gray rather than black and white, and I think that we'll have some. And it's got great cast of characters. The one that we will be talking about that neither of us seen is Castle in the Sky. I also have it written down as Castle in the Sky Castle. I know nothing about it. Look forward to going into it blind. That is one of. So, do you have it in front of you? The name of the director for Up on Poppy Hill?
Nope.
That is.
Something is.
Up on Poppy Hill is directed by Goro Miyazaki. We talked about this previously. I forgot about that. The son of the iconic legendary director Hayao Miyazaki, who is the director on Mononoke and Castle in the Sky Castle. So that will be 3 weeks of Ghibli. I think that'll be a lot of fun.
Do you notice you pronounce that differently each time?
Do I? Well, I've heard it both ways. I don't know which way it's actually
Ghibli
pronounced.
And then Ghibli.
I have heard it. Let's see if we can get an answer on this right now. Ghibli. So this says Ghibli, but also it's not taking into account that it's a Japanese word. Correctly pronounced with a hard G. Okay. Ghibli. Okay, there we go. We got an answer. Studio Ghibli. Studio Ghibli August for the time being, though we also have one episode in July, so the summer of Ghibli, summer Studio Ghibli guns out. We'll brainstorm it. We'll come up with something by the end.
We'll find something snarky.
And then September is Transformers 1 month. So we will be talking about the one Transformers film that we did not talk about in Hot Bot Summer, which was 2018's Bumblebee. That will be, as of right now, September 11th. Wake up! Wake up! The Decepticons have hit the Pentagon! And then September 25th.
If I had a nickel for each Smiling Friends or each kind of Oni Plays Smiling Friends reference we've made in the past 24 hours, I'd have 2 nickels.
And then September 25th, we will be talking about the new animated Transformers 1 film. So that's our plans for the next couple months. That will take us all the way up through October.
Maybe we'll get Skeleton Crew?
Yeah, hopefully by then we will have an announcement of Skeleton Crew, so we will be able to have a better image of what we're doing next after that. But that's over 2 months worth of content, so that'll be good.
2 months.
Thank you so much for joining us for the Acolyte Suns Out, Guns Out Summer, brought to you by Qimir, the gun show, Teethies. I had a good time. Lots of good memes. Speaking of which, we have a very brief meme minute.
I'll make 2 next week. One you have to guess, and then the one that's very obviously me because I didn't make it this week.
Sounds good. Because we just recorded this last Saturday, we're very skimpy on memes, but I do have a couple.
Skimpy memes.
Skimpy memes. Really hot memes. Hot. Yeah, I get them now.
Summer.
Hot memes summer. I'm on the wrong account in order to find this reel.
A pop-up ad. There are hot bots in your area.
Oh no. Oh no. Meme minute. I just have one video here.
Did you make it?
No, actually I have 2 videos. 3 videos? I have 3 videos. So here's, I did not make any of these videos.
Sounds like something someone would say if they made a video.
So this video, the premise is okay, but the ending to this video is very funny, so I'm going to fast forward. So it's what if stormtroopers got LASIK eye surgery, and they just start, it's like scenes from, they start being really good at shooting, the stormtroopers. It just shows them like wiping people out. But here at the end, they are chasing Luke through the Death Star.
Oh, no.
And they did this amazing edit where Luke gets shot and just goes flailing. It's very visual. I mostly just want to get Rachel's... It's a very shocking edit.
Is that what you sent me earlier?
No, that's a totally different thing. I can play that to get your reaction.
Well, okay. I do here. Let me watch it live, so I don't...
Okay. I was just watching this video earlier in the day, and it's a very, very kind of mediocre video. I was more interested in the thing it was talking about. It was showing off this, someone's fan-made Star Wars fighting game, and there was one particular moment that it's not the video itself that's funny. The actual video game itself is very funny. It's at, I sent you the link, and it's at the 3 minutes and 6 second mark. There's a sound effect. It's in this fighting game, they pretty much try to do almost every character, and it's Grogu versus the like big horned creature that they fight in season 1.
The Mudhorn?
The Mudhorn, yes. But I'll just let you play it.
It's Baby Yoda versus the Rhino. That's so good. What kind of moves does Baby Yoda have? What can Baby Yoda do? Keep standing force push.
Can you hear Grogu's sound effects?
Baby sounds are getting kind of annoying. Feel the wrath of Baby Yoda's force
and that's it.
So
you can hear. You can. It's hard to hear over the. It's just normal baby sounds, but every time you get hit, he does that. It's horrendous. I got another video here. There's a Transformers one. It says in quotes, "Your shift starts at 8. Me at." It's Optimus Prime floating frozen through space. I found that very real. So this is something you care about, accessibility. We should all care about, but it's one of your special interests. One of your passions. Disney Plus has audio description for those who have vision impairments. But has vision impairments?
No, wait. What do they have?
Audio description.
Oh, I'm so sorry. For some reason, I thought you meant subtitles, and I was like,
yeah, I don't think subtitles are very good for people with vision impairments.
Cameron.
This is the audio description from a recent episode of The Acolyte.
As he begins to untie a belted knot from around his waist, she straightens up for a better look. He begins to undress, revealing a prominent scar on his well-toned back. Dropping his billowy-legged Hakama pants, he steps forward with the sunlight accentuating his taut muscles. He wades barefoot into the pool.
That laughing is from the video. It very much sounds like a romance novel.
It does sound like a novel.
Describing Qimir getting naked and going into the water. So that was good. Okay, visual memes on this audio format. One of these I did make, though this is not an official game, but I will still have you guess.
Are you kidding me?
I guess there's only 3.
I'm at a disadvantage. Okay.
But again, does not count. This is a recreational match, not an official professional match. You have 2 characters here, Max Rebo and just Commander Veers, but it has their full names: Maximilian Rebo and Maximilian Veers.
Correct. You did not make that one. I know for a fact.
We then have a image of Monster Energy Zero Ultra, but they just have Monster and Zero circled, and it goes over to an image of Ghidorah, who's also called Monster Zero. But it's kind of like a conspiracy theory image of they're both circled with an arrow towards Ghidorah. So
that one.
Is that what your guess is?
Yeah.
I did not make that one.
Oh.
You should have waited.
It doesn't matter, so I can do what I want.
Yeah. This one, it's got it's a comic, but superimposed on the characters is Chopper talking to Zeb. Hey, can I borrow $20? Says Chopper. Zeb, what does a droid need money for? Chopper, droid stuff. Chopper's throwing money at a stripper. It was originally a turtle who said to the guy, I need money. What does a turtle, do you have any money? What does a turtle need money for? Turtle stuff. Just imagine Chopper. Well, thank you everyone for listening. I thought this was going to be a short episode. We had barely any news and almost no memes, and we're going to land just shy of 2 hours. Maybe we're not very good at podcasting. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. As always, thank you to Caleb Jacoby for our intro and outro music. Props to Rachel for our artwork and Twitter account at Rebels Robots Pod. Shout out to Athena. Is she laying on her bed over there? I wouldn't be able to tell.
She's over there. She's giving herself a bath.
See, that's the difficulty with her new black bed is you can't tell if she is on or not on it. If she's not on it, it's hard to tell that she's not there.
She's just round and fuzzy like her.
And black. Thank you to Athena for our editing.
Thanks to Cameron for our Facebook.
And Instagram.
Yep.
Give us something to read on the pod. Tell us what you think about Suns Out, Guns Out Summer brought to you by Qimir, Gun Show. It's Teethies. That's not me being dramatic. That's me having to remember the whole thing. This is Cameron and Rachel signing off saying, you're trying to control the uncontrollable, Rachel.
I don't control the podcast.
Not the podcast. Athena. Lick, 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 lick.
She's a hydrated girly.